One of the most common questions I get as a construction educator is, how do you do electrical wiring? Now, a couple things with electrical, some basic things. This is what we're going to be using. This is what my students typically use to wire something up. These are called new work boxes. So you can see they're new work because this is a stud, and typically drywall or some other kind of walling will go over this, and these would stick out of the wall and you can actually put in your receptacles. This is the standard of receptacles. This is a TR or tamper resistant receptacle. It's very basic, very simple. Now you can get really crazy with electrical and actually going through and utilizing or knowing all the different kinds of amperages, stuff like that. We actually work on these guys when we get more advanced. This is like your traditional house kind of model. Everything comes in through the side or front, and that's how you wire up everything in here, right? And you can do all different kinds of wiring. For basics, what we're gonna be doing today is we stick with this. I'm going to come in through this box using this pre-wired plug, right? This one is just something I made up. Works pretty well. Very easy, very simple, right? And we're just gonna go into this box, and we're going to wire up this plug. We'll test it out using a couple different things. This is one of them, and then my multimeter. This is my multimeter. Now you can go cheap or expensive in multimeters. This one happens to be very expensive, but for a good reason, right? I typically use a continuity tester to make sure that I am wiring up everything correctly. And I'll show you what that means here in a couple moments. Now, multimeter is definitely not a must-have. It is a very, very nice to have. This guy is an outlet tester. This is a must-have. It's how you know your outlet's actually working. If you have an open ground or an open neutral, open hot, you reverse something, this will be able to tell you all your kind of problems without having a major problem. And a couple things to get us started. I'm using some Romex wire. Code states a couple different things. You're gonna hear me mention code throughout this video. Romex is a coded wire. So you got your 3 wires. This wire is a 14-2 wire. So that means there's 2 wires, a hot and a neutral, and then a ground wire. I believe this one says with a ground. It's somewhere on there, copper building wire. Oh, there it goes, with ground. It always says that. Sometimes you can buy the wire without a ground and you need to have ground. Now, if you're using a plastic box, you cannot use any sort of metal conduit, things like that. This is metal conduit. Metal conduit needs to be grounded to each box. Plastic new work boxes do not need to be grounded to the box. There's really no way to do that. There is a different way that we will ground, and I will show you guys that here in a moment. That being said, a couple tools you will need: a screwdriver. Please do not use a driver like a drill driver, a power drill driver. Those can get into a world of problems. Get really good with this guy first, and then you can maybe move to the power tools. Wire strippers, pretty universal. There's also cutters on them, different size crimping tools, all that kind of stuff. Ground wire, it's always important. Now you could cut off a little bit of this and actually get some ground wire out of that. I just buy my own ground wire, call it good to go. Tape measure might be handy, and a pin, and some of these wire nuts. We'll get to those in just a moment, okay? Okay, let's move on. Let's actually go through the wiring process. So this is part 1 of a little series. Also, a knife is going to be handy. I'm going to wire just a receptacle. Later on, next series, or next part, I'm going to wire up a switch into a light. Very basic, okay? Now, code states I have to have 6 inches of unobscured or free wire in a box. So, you would measure 6 inches and put them into the box. Okay, so we have about 6 inches of wire inside our plug. Now let's measure and let's kind of figure out exactly how much wire to take off. This is a 14 gauge wire, so we go to the 14 on our plug. Code states that you must have about an inch, inch and a half to remove. You basically place the wire on the little 14, press down, and wiggle back and forth, and you'll remove that casing and leave a bare wire. I need to do a little bit more. Some wire cutters have like a little fancy kind of gauge on them to figure out how much wire you need to cut off. I just like to gauge by my eye. Okay, there it goes. Now, on the receptacle itself, black goes to brass. Your black wire is going to be carrying all the electricity. It's going to return on the white wire. So the brass nut handles black to brass. The white nut here, or screw, handles the white wire, or the silver. Green is very simple. Green is ground, okay? Now what I like to do is I like to make a little U shape out of this. So you take the tip, there's these little like grab or teeth on the tip of your wire, your wire cutters. Bend it down, good view of that one. Then bend it upwards towards that. I'm gonna do another one in a different shot. White wire, bend down, and bend around. Okay? Very simple, very basic. Then what we do is we take our electrical plug, flip in the right direction. Power is going out this way, so we want to make sure the little face you see here is down. Black to brass. A pro tip, make sure your black wire is facing in the same direction as your screw is. So when you tighten, it actually helps you out a little bit and it tightens up your screw. Now you want to just kind of ease it on in there. There you go. Now as we tighten, this little U shape is going to pull along with your, this little U shape is going to pull while the screw is essentially screwing in. Once we get it, and we're going to screw in. You can see the screw here, or the wire kind of going. It should be very tight. You shouldn't be able to pull it out. Okay, next one, very simple, very easy. Hook it on. Do another one, so screw it down. Should pull it right in. Beautiful. Now we gotta figure out what to do with our ground. So when it's free like this, we need to have 6 inches of a pigtail. So what I like to do is I like to measure 6 inches and cut a little wire. I call that a pigtail. So we still do the same thing. So do 14, ½ inch, 14 gauge, ½ inch, a little more. Bend back, make our little distinctive hook right here. We want to kind of hook it on there. Screw it in. Beautiful. Now we would use this thing called a wire nut to attach these 2 wires together. Some people like to twist their wires together when using a wire nut. You don't necessarily need to, but it does make pretty fair practice to do that. Twist it on, and the wire nut kind of holds it into place, like so. Okay. That being said, we are good to go now. So now we just push this back in our box and we get ready to do our testing. First thing I need to do is I need to take my tester. Something I learned from a professor in college where he checked continuity before he went. So it's going to make a noise when red and black or neutral and hot touch each other. So let's say, I'm gonna do this. Let me hook on to my plug. Hook on right here. Now let me go over here Oh, you hear that? So that means it is getting a signal from the neutral side to my neutral here. Okay, let's try the hot side right now. Okay. Now, just for kicks and giggles, we can try to ground. You hold on ground, let's go to the, there we go. All right. So technically this should be hooked up correctly. We are going to try to plug this in. This is probably the most dangerous part of this whole thing. But if you follow these steps along, just by doing a simple receptacle, you should be fine. So let's try to plug it in. Okay, so I have my plug right here. Have the receptacle and the plug. Now let's just go and let's plug it in. Ah! Oh man, can you imagine? Oh, it's kind of hard to see, but it looks like, there we go. We have 2 yellow lights, so that would mean I have correct wiring. So everything is done correctly. And that's it. That is how you wire up a receptacle. Nothing fancy, nothing special. Very, very simple, very easy. Now, of course, when we talk about going with breakers and that sort of thing, people like to get a little skeeved out. This will come in a later video when we talk about wiring up breakers, talk about wiring through different boxes, that sort of stuff. But just basic wiring of a receptacle, this guy is very simple, very easy to do. Any of you can accomplish it. Okay guys, this is part 1. We'll catch you in part 2.